Hello, everyone. Welcome back to episode 100. Oh my God, I'm excited about that. I actually can't believe it. We have made it to 100 episodes at last, and I am over the moon about it. So, thank you very much for joining me. I am going to pre warn you, I've got 11 questions, I think. And this will probably be a long episode because I can talk a glass eye to sleep. So let's get straight into it. So the first question, by the way, thank you to those of you who sent me in questions. I had some really good ones. So thank you very much. So the first question was, what is your quickest and easiest way to get back into a high vibe state when you're having a shitter of a day, a week, or a month? Right, so I'm not going to say who these are off, by the way. I'm just going to read the questions out in case they don't want me to say who they're from. So, my quick answer to this one would always be meditation, as you could probably already guess. But I will give you some other things that you can do as well. So, I suppose it would depend on the duration of time that I had allowed myself to get into that place. So, if I was having just like a shitter of a day, I would probably just use like a quick breathing technique, and I also like to use music because I find that's a really quick way to lift my mood. So if I was finding myself in the eye of a shitstorm where I felt like everything was going wrong and my day was going awful, I would stop, I would focus on my breath for maybe 10 breaths and just allow myself to come back to me and what's actually important and calm myself down and get myself out of that frantic energy. I would focus on the best part of my day and what I can be grateful for. And the other thing that I like to do is get in my car, and I do this very often, put my music on, my favourite music, absolutely blast it out and just drive around for half an hour, and I come back a new woman. There is no therapy for me quite like singing in the car. So those would be my tips if you're having a bad day. So it's nothing too deep. If it was a bad week, I'd probably allow myself to release my emotion that was causing me to feel that way. And for that, for me, it would be through having a good old scrike, because I love a scrike. I would try and connect with nature in any way that I could to ground that energy. I'd take my feet, not my feet off, I'd take my shoes off, I'd leave my feet on. I would take my shoes off and I would go and stand on the grass. And then I'd probably just have like a nice self-care evening where I had a bath and just generally looked after myself and took care of myself and prioritised getting back to feeling good over what else I need to do, working through my to-do list. If it was a bad month, if I'd found that I'd allowed myself to get into a bit of a spiral and not caught it early on, then I would be definitely getting out my journal and purging all of the things that are going on in my mind, what I'm thinking, the things that are making me perceive it as a bad month onto the paper, purge it to paper. I would basically just have a rant to my journal, and people who are interested in learning about manifestation are often quite scared of saying or writing anything that they perceive to be negative, because there's this kind of message out there that's basically like whatever you say or think is just going to happen like that. And that's not really the case. Sometimes it's necessary to get things out. So just know that it is safe for you to release it, get it out, dig up the weeds so that you've got space in the soil to plant something new. So alongside journaling, I would be consistently meditating, not for a long time, just for 5-10 minutes, because the act of meditation is actually training your nervous system. So even when you think you've had a bad meditation, which I hear people saying all the time, like there's no such thing as that, but what they mean is they've not gone very deep into it and they don't feel like anything's happened. Every single time that you meditate, you are training your nervous system to respond better to stress and to stop you from entering that fight or flight so quickly. So that is what I would do to get myself back into a high vibe state and get rid of those bad vibes that you might have accidentally slipped into. So number 2, This one was actually a question that my friend asked me privately last week, but I thought it was a really good question and one that a lot of people might have too. So they asked me, how do you let go of things that have happened to you, in particular things that you perceive someone to like have done to you? So it could have been any setting really, but basically where you feel like something's been done to you that's really hurt you and those feelings are still hanging around and you're finding it difficult to let go of what's happened. Now, I've got a lot of personal experience with this one, as you can imagine. So the answer to that question, which I will share with everyone because I think it will perhaps help people, is that it is an ongoing process, especially the bigger the thing that's happened. If it's a smaller thing, it'll take less time. If it's a bigger thing, it'll be more deeply rooted and it'll come up more and more. So when you think it's done and you've dealt with it, sometimes it'll come up again and you'll feel those same emotions. So my advice would be to always give those emotions an outlet. So if you're getting angry, get in your car, turn your music up, scream your head off, go into the middle of nowhere, do it there. If you're sad, cry, like release that emotion. If you are just feeling very jittery and anxious about it, go and shake your body, like move around, dance, jump around, move your arms and legs, like allow that energy and those emotions to come out of you in one way or another. So obviously I do love a cry. Like I have scheduled times where I'll be like, right, do you need to cry? Yes, you do. Right, okay, off you go. And I will release it. But I always find a way to allow those emotions to come up to the surface and be released now. And that's really helped me with that kind of releasing things that have happened in the past. What many of us try to do is suppress them because we don't want to feel them because we think that they're uncomfortable or that they're negative emotions. But actually, they're just emotions. Like, you don't need to be scared of them. They do need to be acknowledged and then they're going to move on and stop bothering you. And I have given this analogy a few times before, but I'm going to give it again in case you need to hear it. So I think of emotions, particularly the ones that we associate with being uncomfortable, like sadness and anger, as a little wild boar, like the one in the game on Crash Bandicoot. Don't ask me why, but it just came through to me one day like that. And it seemed to resonate with a lot of people when I mentioned it before, so we're just going to go with it, right? So if you've never played Crash Bandicoot, there's this wild boar that is basically just like running riot, and I imagine your emotions to be like that. So think of this boar as running as fast as it can, and you'll be able to feel that in your body as emotions when they start bubbling up inside you. So when you feel like you need to cry or you feel like you're getting really angry. So at that point, you've got two choices. And the first one is to keep the wild boar out as long as possible until it inevitably breaks down the door and gets into your house. And once it gets into your house, it's got no escape. You are the house, by the way. So it's running frantically around, like smashing all your furniture to pieces, breaking all your vases, ripping your curtains down, scratching all your walls. It's going to get into every part of your house and cause a lot more damage. So because it's got nowhere to go, it's not being released anywhere. So for example, in real life, that might look like you taking what a past partner did and letting it ruin a new relationship because the boar is still stuck in the house. The emotions are still stuck in the body. Or you can choose to hear that boar banging on the front door and feel those emotions coming up and prepare to allow it in by opening the back door, standing aside, allowing it to just come in. And what's going to happen then is it's going to run through the hallway, might scratch the skirting board, it might put a small chip in your grandma's Ming vase or something, but it's then just going to run out the back door as fast as it came in. So it's going to be uncomfortable. You don't really want to let the wild boar in at all, but if you do and you get comfortable with that idea that, yeah, it might knock a couple of vases over and it might scratch your wall, but it's not going to do the same damage as if you let it stay in there for a long time, then you'll get into that habit of allowing your emotions to come up, releasing them, and then moving on. And the more that you do that, the quicker that process will happen and the less discomfort you will feel with it. Now, if you have a situation where you feel like in order to get those emotions out, you have something to say to someone, then I've got a suggestion for you, which worked really well for me. So I'm talking mostly to do with like relationships, but it could also be friendships. It could be something with colleagues, whatever it is. So when the wedding thing happened, I'm always reluctant to talk about this because like I'm always on a balance of like, do I speak openly about it or do I just keep my gob shut? But anyway, it's a 100th episode, why not? We'll speak openly. So when the wedding thing happened, I spent like a year or so being very, very close to my ex. Like we were like best mates. We were together all the time. And I prioritised him and making sure that he was in a good place mentally. And that was for two reasons I now know in hindsight. The first one was because I knew that I was so much stronger than him in my mindset. I was much stronger. And I was really concerned at the time about him. And no matter what had happened between us and what had gone on behind the scenes, and there was lots, this was a man that I'd spent 6 years of my life with. I didn't want him to suffer. And like that concerned me. So I prioritised his well-being above my own, knowing that I was strong enough to kind of carry the load. The second reason, which was much more subconscious, was that by looking after him and making him a priority, I could easily then push my emotions that were very uncomfortable about what had happened down so far that I couldn't even find them anymore. And it was over a year until I did. And that came up because after being there for him like non-stop for a year, like you wouldn't actually believe the shit that I put up with. But I'd be there for the most bizarre scenarios, like he'd be ringing me, he'd be coming round to my house talking and crying about his girlfriend and the problems that they were having in the relationship, and like just him saying that he felt trapped and he didn't want to be there and what could he do and all this shit, right? It was like completely inappropriate to be talking to me about it, but it happened on many occasions. So all of that I was taking on to prioritise him, like making sure that he was okay. And a lot of this stuff was like stuff that was way beyond what you should be sharing with your ex. Like, obviously, like, imagine the horror of knowing that, like, your boyfriend's going to his ex-girlfriends and telling him all this shit about you. But anyway, that's what I did because I was worried about him and I didn't want him to, you know, feel in a bad way. So I did that until one point came where basically he just fucked me over again. It really pissed me off over a friendship thing. And he cut me off at that point, I imagine out of panic or maybe out of force from who he was with after, I don't know. So we didn't have any contact from there, and that is when the feelings came up again for me. It was like a year later. I was really angry at him for what he'd done more recently, but that was bringing up like everything else that I'd put up with and what had actually happened. So I knew that it was time for me to release those emotions and to release him. And that was kind of the first time that had properly come up for me. So what I did is I wrote him a letter, and this letter was about 5 pages long. And I knew right in the letter that I was never going to send it to him. So I would say that writing that letter was probably one of the most emotional and the most difficult and also the most freeing things that I have ever done, because I knew that I was never going to send this letter. So it allowed me to write completely unfiltered, not worrying about what he could actually handle hearing or how my words would affect him. And so I could write in there about the damage that he'd caused through his actions, which were utterly bizarre. And he'd be mortified if I spoke about him on here, so I'll give him that grace at least. But I could get out all of the things that I had never said to him for fear of him not being able to handle it, because that was my fear. Like, I felt like he wouldn't be able to handle what I had to say, so I didn't say it. So parts of this letter were absolutely fucking savage. Like, I could have never said them to his face because I'm a good person, and I really would have been genuinely worried about how he would have dealt with that. And so once I'd got all of that out of my system and there was nothing left for me to say, I finished that letter by then writing all the things that I was grateful for about our relationship, how thankful I was for the many happy memories that we'd made, and how much we like had enjoyed our time together and how close we'd been, and even in the months after the wedding, how we handled that together, and just all of the good things that he brought into my life over the years, because there was a lot of good about that relationship. And I finished the letter by like wishing him well and saying that I released him to go and enjoy his life. And I genuinely do want him to enjoy his life, and I want him to find that peace and that happiness. I don't think he's found it yet from what I've heard, but I hope he does find that. Like, I genuinely do. And I had to release that. You know, I had to release him and stop him from affecting my energy, basically, and allowing me to continue feeling like mad or annoyed or sad or whatever it was. So out of everything that I had tried, I would say that was the most effective and practical thing that I did to restore my peace about the situation and find a bit of like closure on it. There is something else that you can do too, and that's something called revision. And I'm not going to go into that one right now because I'll be here forever. I've already been talking for 15 minutes and we're only on question fucking 2. But revision is basically just returning to a memory that has got you hung up in some way, whatever like the scenario is, and creating a new version of events of like how that actually happened. You rewrite the story in your mind until it becomes like an altered memory. Maybe I'll do an episode on revision actually, because I think it'd be really helpful for you, particularly around like any events that have left you with some kind of limiting belief. It's a great tool. So let's move on. Number 3. What do you do when you've done all the right things? So this person, again, I'm not going to say who it is, but this person has created something online and they are struggling to sell it, basically, and are feeling frustrated about it and feeling a little bit like downhearted about the fact that it's not been received how they'd hoped. So this was about like, what do you do when you've done all of the right things? Like, you've advertised, you've had the visualizations, you've felt the emotions. Do you have to just admit to yourself that it's not working and it's not meant to be? Do you have to be realistic? And this person also mentioned that they'd always had this feeling of like, I'm always rejected sort of belief going on. Right, so first of all, I would say that if there isn't an underlying belief like I'm always rejected, and you just can't understand why that's happening, I'll talk about that in a minute, like the underlying beliefs. But rejection is usually redirection, as I know very well indeed, after answering that last question. So sometimes you might be being guided towards another path and you might be feeling like you're being blocked on a particular path. However, having said that, it's very important to remember that you get to choose the outcome. So when we're talking about being realistic, what we mean by that is, should we react to what we see in the 3D? Well, the answer is a definite no for that, because you are the creator of what you're experiencing in the 3D. There's nobody else. So being realistic is very unnecessary, because that's like you reflecting to something that you reacting to something that you've created. It doesn't make any sense to do that. You can just create a new reality that you prefer, and you do this by developing the belief that will empower you. So things like, for example, in this scenario, it might be, I get paid to do what I love. There are hundreds of people who would absolutely love to work with me. I have people asking to work with me every day, whatever the belief is that would work for you. I would say, though, that if you have found yourself reacting a little bit too much for too long, or paying too much attention to what you see in the 3D around a certain area of your life, and you no longer, as a result of that, feeling excited about it, and maybe the doubt has become overwhelming, it is okay to choose to put something aside, or to reinvent it, or to follow a different path, or to find a way to inject some excitement back into it. I have done that myself, where I feel like I've got myself into such a kind of fucking state about something that I know, even though I understand that I have created that, it would probably be more difficult for me to regain my belief in something doing well than it would be to just start afresh, and I've lost my excitement for it. So in that scenario, I would choose to change direction. I would choose to recreate something with a new look or whatever it is. And I'm not suggesting that's what you should do, But it's okay if that's what you choose to do, and you get to choose. You get to choose whether you're going to change the outcome or whether you're going to follow something new. That's your decision. Sometimes as your awareness expands, things that you created months ago might not be aligned with you anymore. But as people, in particular, if you're somebody who's making your living on the online space, you can get very hung up on the strategy and doing all of these things, posting on your social media a certain amount of time and advertising. That's all great, but what's far more important is addressing the underlying beliefs that are blocking you from receiving it. And you could have the best product in the world. You could be paying a fortune to advertise it and get the best marketing every day. You could be constantly on your social media and have hundreds of thousands of followers. But if the belief that, for example, I always get rejected is still lurking under the surface, you're flogging a dead horse. Like, that's where your attention needs to go first, because that belief will block and it will override any kind of strategy that you could come up with, that you could buy into, whatever it is. It's not going to work. So if you feel like you've got something underlying, do continue to do that digging, continue to replace that belief first before you do anything else. Neville Goddard, who is or was a teacher of the law of assumption, which is what I teach, says there is nothing to change but self. So really get that message ingrained within you. You are the only consciousness. There's nothing else to change. And when you know that and you understand it on a really deep level and you've got your head around it, and it takes a while to get your head around that, I think, that you are the one who is creating your reality through the thoughts that you have and the beliefs that you've formed, you can be so neutral to what you experience in your 3D. So that, for example, the thought process would look like this, like, I've advertised my services, I've put my product on, I've been on my social media every day this week and no one's asked to work with me. How interesting. What thoughts must I be having then that have obviously I haven't been aware of, which are causing me to block me from receiving what I want? Let me go and change those thoughts so I can experience a new 3D reality, a different one that I prefer. It's neutral. It's like, oh, look what I've made. I don't like that. Imagine it like Play-Doh. Like, you make something and you don't think, oh, fucking hell, I'm stuck with this like really shit sculpture. You just squeeze it together again and you make something else. It's that easy. You just have to go within and change it within. There's nothing that you can change in the outside world that is going to have any positive effect. You're just trying to manipulate things outside. It's like you are, like when people are trying to change an outcome by doing something on the outside, and by the outside I mean like in your 3D world, what you're experiencing, it's such a waste of time, because that is just a shadow of the thoughts that you've thought in the past. So if you keep reacting to them and thinking, oh, this is shit, I don't like this, like, that's all you'll create more of. Go within, think, interesting, I don't like that result. Something has obviously gone wrong in the process. I need to think a better thought. Which thought have I been having that's no longer serving me? And replace that thought and build a new belief. So I hope that helps you. So, number 4, good God, this is going to be a long podcast. How do you not care about the opinions of others? For example, wanting to be your authentic self around someone, but masking who you are for fear of looking weird. And I'm going to pause right there because I've got to go on a one-to-one call now, and I'll be back in the shake of a lamb's tail. I'm back. 4 hours have passed by. I've been for a walk, I've been food shopping, I've been and got Gloria some cat food, and I have done a one-to-one. So anyway, number 4. I've just read that question out, so I won't read it again. So first off, I would think about all the people that you really like and ask yourself, what is it that you like about them? Because there'll be more than one person who you like. And by the people that you like, I mean the people who you leave feeling like you want to be in their energy more. And I'm going to guess that all of those people might have different personality traits and things about them that you like, but I'm pretty certain that almost all of them will have this in common, and it's that they are just authentically, completely who they are, and they don't make any apologies for it, because that is what makes people feel like they want to be around others and that they like them. So often they will be a bit like weird, I'm doing air quotes, because what weird really is just expressing who you truly are, because every single person is completely unique and special. And when you allow that uniqueness to shine, then what often happens is you appear different from the crowd. So that gives you sometimes the label of being weird. So I would say to embrace the weirdness as a sign that you are choosing to let yourself shine instead of falling into line with other people. When I started this podcast, for example, one of the things that I felt like I should change is to tone down how I've got a very broad Bolton accent, if you've not already noticed. And not to swear, because then it would be more digestible for other people, and I would listen to other podcasters and think, oh, I don't know, like theirs is a bit more polished than mine. They cut out all the ums and the ers and the likes, and maybe I'd get a bigger audience, but a bigger audience is no fucking good to me if they're not my people. I only want my audience. I want the right listeners. I want the ones who are going to resonate with me, because they could get the same information from lots of other sources and YouTube videos and other podcasters, but it's about who resonates with you that will allow you to like really take in that message that they're sharing with you. And I was only able to do that if I was being completely myself, which included swearing and having a Bolton accent and being a bit here, there and everywhere. And in actual fact, not filtering myself at all has been the best decision I have made in regards to this podcast. Well, in regards to my life in general, actually, because it's allowed my listeners to really get to know me. And that has been the biggest factor that has contributed to my success so far. So when I get reviews, which I absolutely adore from you, a lot of the time they'll say, like, you feel like I'm your friend. That is exactly what I want. Like, I want people to feel safe in my energy, and they can only do that when I am who I am, and I'll let you in on the fact that I am a bit weird and that I cock things up and that I'm not perfect in any way, shape or form. So when you are exactly yourself, your energy changes and you become very magnetic, because you become that safe space for other people to also do the same and be their self as well. So we need more weird. Don't try and hide it. Like, bring that out. Look at it as a positive. And again, going back to what I was saying in the other question before, you choose how people perceive you. There's nothing to change but self. So you can decide that everyone loves you exactly as you are, and that everyone likes the fact that you're a bit weird. And that is what you will see being reflected back to yourself in other people's behaviour, because there is nothing other than you. So when you get to love yourself, you'll see that people will be a mirror for your self-love and your self-acceptance, and you won't feel like you need to hide anything, because they'll love you for being exactly who you are. And also, aside from that, if somebody's got something bad to say, they're very fucking unlikely to say it to your face anyway, so you'll never know about it unless you ask. So, number 5, does desperation overrule vision? I desperately want to lose weight and get healthy, but I just constantly let myself down and I just can't visualise it happening. Yes, desperation will absolutely override your vision, because what you're doing there is you're thinking of your vision, you're not thinking from it, because if you were thinking from it, you would have already lost the weight, you would already be healthy, you are already living there, so you wouldn't need to see it in the 3D in order to believe that. Gloria has just decided she's going to start rubbing her chops on the laptop, so if you hear something strange, please allow it. She has been here since episode 1, so I feel like I'd be cruel to boot her off the bed right now. Anyway, so what was I saying? Yeah, so you will manifest more of something that you don't want if you are in that state of lack, because you're telling the universe, or really what's going on is you have this... No, Gloria, you're taking the piss now. Come on. Over here, please. Excuse me. You don't get this in other podcasts, do you? No, move it. Get down. Thank you. Sorry about that. I could filter that out, but I'm not going to. So, anyway, let me go back to the question. Hang on. What was it again? Right, yeah. So if you are in a state of lack, of not having something, being desperate about it, you're creating a barrier between you and having that manifestation. And that is because you're just looking at this vision and thinking, oh, how nice that would be, but I can't get it. That's not possible for me. And I get that totally, because I've struggled with this one in particular for years and years, and I still find it a challenge sometimes. In fact, I now work with somebody who helps me unpick my beliefs around that and my beliefs about becoming healthier. And it's working amazingly because I have a better understanding of what's going on now. So I would say this. I would say get clear as fuck on your vision of why it's important to you that you get healthier or lose weight or whatever it is that's your like health goal. Identify who is the woman who already has what you want. That's very important. Think about absolutely everything about her. How does she dress? How does she walk? How does she hold herself? What thoughts does she think? What foods does she eat? What habits does she have? What exercise does she take? Like, how does she look after her body? And then go and take small action on them. They don't need to be massive things. They just need to be small actions in the right direction. So even if you eat a tray of dairy milk for breakfast by accident, been there, done that on thousands of occasions, ask yourself in that moment afterwards, like, don't start fucking berating yourself. Ask yourself, what would she do? Well, she would just move on with the day and be like, oh, that's cool, I've just eaten some chocolate, fine, who cares? And then she would enjoy the healthy meal that she's prepared for lunch. She would not start berating herself and punishing herself, because the woman in your vision doesn't have any issue with food, with emotional attachments to it, with dieting history. She doesn't have that. That doesn't exist for her. So if she happened to eat a tray of milk tray in the morning for a breakfast, it would be unusual, but she wouldn't be like panicking, because she'd just go back to what she normally does. So live inside the vision and take aligned action from it as much as possible, rather than just thinking of it. That is how you're going to create a shift in your identity and become the person who has that healthy lifestyle and is at her ideal weight. So if you have got an issue with eating or constantly eating the types of foods that you would like to avoid, and be careful not to label them as like good foods and bad foods, they're just foods. But if you would like to avoid eating too much of certain foods, then do the digging to see what beliefs are underneath the surface which are driving you to behave like that, to eat in ways that you're using it as an emotional kind of crutch, because there's always something underlying it. There's always some kind of attachment to it. There's always some kind of belief about yourself that you are trying to kind of self-soothe by doing that. And I totally get that. Some people it's drugs, some people it's smoking, some people it's gambling, some people it's even like over-exercising. For lots and lots of people, it's eating, because it's something that you can't just quit. You know what I mean? You've got to stop. You can't just stop eating. Like, you've got to eat. So totally relate to that. I would recommend you buying a book called Atomic Habits. It's absolutely amazing, and it will help you to develop that shift and make it a much easier process. So think of it like this. I really find this kind of analogy useful. You're voting for the person that you're becoming with every action, and this relates to anything. It doesn't just relate to health goals or weight. It could be building a new business, or I don't know, anything, any area of your life. So think of it like you are placing votes for two versions of yourself. There's the old identity and the new identity. So for example, if you have a day where you eat a McDonald's breakfast at 7:30 on the way to work, but you also, in that same day, don't then spiral out of control and you just carry on like the woman in your vision would do, or the man in your vision, and you go for a walk and you cook a nutritious meal for your tea and you take your vitamins, yeah, you've placed one vote with the McDonald's breakfast for the old identity, but you've placed 3 votes with the walk and the nutritious meal and the vitamins for the new version. You're still winning. What causes the problem a lot of the time, at least for me in the old identity, is you eat the Mackey's breakfast, 1 vote, and then feel like shit and disheartened and spiral into placing all the rest of your votes on that old identity. And that's what does the damage. Does that make sense? So every time you place a vote by taking a small action, try and put it in the direction of the vision, of the new identity, because you're building the belief then that you can depend on yourself, and you're releasing that belief that you constantly let yourself down, or whatever it is that you've developed the belief around. So after a certain amount of time, because that's a habit formation, then you will naturally want to place votes for the woman in your vision, because that's who you are. You're living in the vision from it. You're living as her now. So it becomes unnatural to want to do things that the old identity would. You're kind of like shedding that, if that makes sense. And that's called embodiment. So go and get really, really clear on who is she, and then start placing votes for her, and be less concerned when you accidentally post one vote in the wrong ballot box. It's irrelevant. It doesn't matter. Keep moving forward, because that version is winning as long as you keep placing votes in that right ballot box. So I hope that helps you. Should listen to my own advice, shouldn't I? So number 6, what do you do when you say out loud what you want to... Hang on, let me reread that. What do you do when you say out loud what you want to do? For example, starting a new career, and then you have people questioning you about it and trying to put you off. Well, the simple answer is ignore them. But I will say again, stay in your vision. That vision has been given to you specifically. It's in your imagination, not theirs. So it's likely that if you share a big vision with somebody, they will think you're mad, and they... Gloria, for fuck's sake, why no? She's got the zoomies. She's just having a madam around the frigging apartment. Right, so they will think you're mad, and they will try and keep you safe, because we're conditioned for safety and for security. This is what I was talking about last week. And to me, I think that's just an absolute surefire way to lead a very dull and unfulfilling life. But not for everyone, I suppose. Maybe people would prefer the safety. I am always after the freedom, the excitement, the adventure, the experiences, the growth. So if you feel the same, maybe you are speaking about your dreams to the wrong crowd. Like, that's something to consider. Find people that are here for the growth, who are already making moves that are so big that yours feel normal or even a bit small. Like, normalising it is a really good way to manifest. I consciously choose all the time to put myself in rooms with people who are 10 steps ahead of me as often as I possibly can, because I want to normalise my vision. That's how it will come in, when you accept that it's normal for you. You don't need to justify what you're doing to anyone. It's none of their business. It's nobody else's business but yours. Use it as fuel to show them what is possible, and show them what is possible for them. The same people that once laughed at your vision or thought it was ridiculous will one day be asking for your help, believe me. So your vision is your vision. So you stay in it, get clear as fuck on it, take aligned action, and build that muscle of sitting in the discomfort so that you can see it manifest into your 3D experience. Just get used to that little bit of discomfort in the in-between. Are you taking the piss, Gloria? Number 7. Do you have a favourite practice and a crystal that you work with? Now, I bloody love a crystal, but I feel like I could make more of them when it comes to actually using them. At the minute, I will carry them with me. I've got like a crystal Bible, so I know like the properties of the different crystals that I've got. I will put certain ones next to my bed. I'll hold them during a meditation, but my knowledge on how to actually work with them is quite limited. I've got quite... Don't you fucking dare get off me, you crazy cow. She's trying to bite my leg. Yeah, my knowledge of like how to actually work with them is pretty limited. I do have a book that somebody bought me once about crystals. I am coaching somebody at the minute who is doing a crystal healing course, so I'm going to tap her up for some advice on that one. I do have quite a vast collection, and I just love the vibes of having crystals in your house. I think they're really beautiful to look at. I think they've got good energy. They make me happy. I could spend hours in a crystal shop, but I would like to know a bit more about them. I would say that my favourite one is very basic bitch. I do love an amethyst. I also love my pyrite crystal, which is sometimes called fool's gold. You used to be able to get it in the 90s in like a little gift box. It's like pretend gold, but it's actually called pyrite and it's a crystal. that one I think I've got a little bit of an attachment to because it's good for like skin conditions. So it was one of the crystals that I used to make my dad have next to his bed when he was going through his treatment because he was being treated for melanoma. So it's good for like skin healing. So I do love my pyrite. This cat is so annoying. Like, she's the queen of my heart, but she's so annoying. She's just being very disruptive. She's like a very bratty child right now. Favourite practices are definitely meditation and journaling. Both of those things have completely changed my life in many fantastical ways. And I'm also going to incorporate another question here that was similar that I had about crystal grids and if I had used Moldavite. I have not used... Are you getting that fur ball up? No problem. Let's get that for you. Get it out. Get it out. I've just had to pull a fur ball out of my mouth. So I've not used a crystal grid. I do have Moldavite. I do use a divination board with crystal pendants to ask questions like yes, no, numbers, letters, but that is slightly different. And my piece of Moldavite is pretty small and I keep it in like a little mini glass case with my other crystals, but I keep it like separately. Now, I did take it out recently when Fran had done an episode and Law of Attraction Changed My Life about Moldavite. I took it out and I used it in a meditation and afterwards I felt very sick and I went straight to sleep, so I put it firmly back in its case to use again when I've gained a bit more knowledge about crystals and how to properly use them. Okay, number 8 says more content on paranormal and afterlife. So it's not specifically a question. I like this idea. I think what I'm going to do is save this one and do a future episode on paranormal experiences that maybe I've had, family members have had, ones that I've heard of that have been really interesting. As far as like telling you anything right now, I would say I believe there is a guy who sits in my living room. I have a feeling that he's my ex-next door neighbour who passed away. He's got a bit of a weird vibe. Not really sure what to do with him. I just kind of ignore him right now. He doesn't scare me, but it's a bit weird. So anyway, I'll go into that on another episode. So number 9. Oh, this is a good one. If you could choose one goal or outcome from your vision board to be achieved right now without any extra input from yourself, which one would it be? I think it would be to walk up a mountain with my dad. That is a big goal for me. He loves walking up mountains. He's always walked up mountains and I would love to be able to go up with him. I do already walk all over the gaff. Like, I walk a lot, but it's pretty flat where I walk out. There's a few hills here and there. I feel like I might pass out if I attempted to walk up a mountain right now, but it is on my vision board. And I'm looking forward to achieving that one in the not so distant future. So that's my main one. I'd also like to hit 1,000, no, not 1,000 downloads, 100,000 downloads on the pod. That would mean a lot to me. I feel like it would be a really, really huge milestone. So it'd be good if it wasn't too far away from my 100th episode. Number 10, I've got 2 more, guys. Number 10, how can I overcome thoughts or beliefs that something is never going to happen or realistically, practically won't happen? Is there a science behind law of attraction? The answer is absolutely yes, there is. It's a process that you can repeat for anything in your life. Now, I teach law of assumption. I used to teach law of attraction at the very beginning, but that's kind of evolved over the time. So I teach law of assumption, which is slightly different, but it comes down to choosing new thoughts. That's manifestation in a nutshell. Choose new thoughts, because your thoughts are creating your reality at all times. So you are the person who is creating that 3D reality, and you're doing that through those thoughts that you are having. And you can choose a new thought at any time. So when you're thinking about whether something's realistic or practical, you choose that. You decide whether it's realistic. You decide whether it's practical, because you're creating the reality. And you might not realise that you can choose a new thought, but you can. So if I tell you to think about like a pink rose, you'll think about a pink rose. If I tell you to think about a green cat or a blue elephant, you can switch the picture in your mind. If I tell you to think about something you like about yourself, you can think about that. If I tell you to think about something that you'd like to eat, you can think about that. So when you are choosing better thoughts and visions, you're developing beliefs that serve you better. So if you don't enjoy what you're currently experiencing, ask yourself, what is it that I desire? And then fix the thoughts accordingly. Like, what am I thinking that's blocking me from receiving this? What can I think instead? This is what I coach people on. Pretty much all of my clients come to me feeling like something isn't possible for them, or feeling stuck and feeling like they know that there's something better, but they don't know how to get there. And they leave knowing that it is possible and that they absolutely can get there, and that they will get there, because they understand then that they are the only creator of the reality of what they experience, and they know how to rewire the belief that is blocking them from receiving, and how to live from the end, from the vision. And number 11, my final question. I'm so sorry if I have missed yours out by accident. If I have, please DM me and I will answer it on my stories for you. I'll do a little video response. So the last one is, how has your life changed since starting the podcast? Jeez, what a question. Well, I started this podcast in October 2021. It's now April 24. So as I'm recording this, that's 2.5, exactly 2.5 years, isn't it? I recorded this first episode feeling like a whole different person to the one who is recording this episode. Like, totally evolved into a different version of myself, different identity. Lots of things have changed. So if I think about what was going on in my life back then, I was still living in the house that I owned with my ex. It was just 3 months after the wedding. We were still very, very close, fairly inseparable at that point, mostly because nobody else liked him and was annoyed with him at that point. So we spent a lot of time together. I had absolutely no boundaries whatsoever. I was still fairly heartbroken on the quiet, but again, I thought I was okay because I just kept stuffing those feelings right down as far as I could, and looking after him and making sure he was okay emotionally. So I'd just stopped my teaching job and I'd returned back to school as a teaching assistant. I felt like pretty lost, I suppose, at that point. I knew like the vague direction that I was heading in. I knew that I wanted to do this at one point, but I just didn't know how it was ever going to be possible. I suppose I knew that it was going to be possible. But yeah, I feel like I felt a bit kind of in a weird limbo state. And I was all right with that because I knew that whatever was going to come next was going to be better than what had gone. And I always had that faith. I don't think I had anywhere near as much confidence in myself at that point. Shortly after that time, I went through a spiritual awakening where I felt like life was like absolute ecstasy and also awful at the same time. So if you have been through something like that, you will understand. You're kind of waking up to the true nature of reality and being horrified at all of the programming that you realise that you've been working on all this time. So I suppose I was in that kind of cocoon phase between being a caterpillar and a butterfly, where you know something spectacular is about to happen, but you're also horribly uncomfortable. So I would go through phases of being a complete hermit and barely leaving the house, not because I was depressed or anything, just because I grew to love my own company so much, which was so weird for me. Like, that was such a new thing. And I ended up feeling really disconnected with the people that I knew before. So I was happiest like on my own. A lot of my friends disappeared, and that wasn't like the fault of anyone. It's just that it's really common that when you're evolving and you're no longer vibrating at the same frequency, they just kind of drop off. Thankfully, the ones that I've had for a very long time kind of came back into my life eventually, so that's good. I sold my old house and then I used the money to buy my new one, and I bought my apartment that was in a bit of a rundown state when I got it. But I just remember the day that I got the keys, sitting in the bedroom on my rolled up mattress, still in all the plastic packaging, and there was there was damp all over the walls. And I remember this guy from my dad's work like bringing stuff up the stairs for me and like looking at me like, "What the fuck have you done here?" The bathroom was horrendous. The kitchen looked like a ski chalet. But I just remember sitting in it and feeling so incredibly happy and grateful, because I just knew that this was the beginning of a brand new life for me. And I couldn't have cared less what it looked like. I was just on absolute cloud nine that I had this space of my very own, like nobody else owned it, for the first time in my life. And I had this vision of how amazing it would be when it was all done. And then my fantastic, beautiful, amazing family helped me make it exactly as I had in my vision. My dad's friend had joiners around there all the time. My mum and dad ripped out a whole bathroom together while I was at work. Everything was covered in dust and plaster and paint. And after about 5 months of going like all the time and just wandering around it and getting excited, I had this amazing, beautiful space, and me and Gloria moved into it, and I felt like I could finally start building myself back up and my new life in a new direction. And some of you will remember this because you've been here from the beginning. And I think that's probably one of the big changes in the 3D, and the other is the fact that my dream was to make this my career. And now here I am, sat here on a Tuesday night recording in that exact space that I had visualised and that was brought to life into my 3D reality. I don't work for anyone, and it's just fucking amazing. Like, I'm living in my vision, and I'm so excited for my future and so grateful for my present. And I'm just trying to take in that I no longer have to go and work for someone, and I get to do what I love and get paid for it and build a business for myself that is changing people's lives for the better and has massive impact all around the world. And it's just incredible, like so amazing. So in that time since I did my first podcast episode, I've done a live workshop, which was totally out of my comfort zone, my first ever one. And then I went on to create the Vibe Tribe and doing them all the time and doing all the stuff in there, and then doing in-person workshops. I worked in a prison, doing loads of one-to-one coaching. I've rebranded, and now I am in the middle of creating this new space with Empire State membership, which is coming next month. And it's just like all come together. Inwardly, I'd say that the biggest difference is the discovery of how powerful a creator I actually am and how powerful of a creator everyone is. And I really didn't know to the extent of that when I started the podcast. I knew a lot about manifestation, but I really had not got the understanding of that I am really creating absolutely everything I experience. And that is such a powerful realization, the realization that we get to choose, that our circumstances do not matter. It's such a feeling of freedom because the possibilities are limitless. You can create anything you desire. So I suppose I've gone from this girl who was once riddled with anxiety and panic attacks in the worst physical condition of my life, dependent on another person, lacking belief in herself massively, just in a constant state of stress, and having gone through some pretty serious trauma in a short amount of time. And she chose to turn that into the springboard for success. And I am so proud of that past version of myself, of her, for having the strength to do that and the determination to do that for us. So in answer to your question, the changes on the outside have been incredible, but the ones on the inside have had the biggest impact for me, definitely. 54 minutes, guys. I knew it was going to be a long one. It's a while since I've done one that's been like nearly an hour long. So on that note, I want to say thank you so much from the very bottom of my heart for being here with me on this rollercoaster ride over 100 episodes and 2.5 years. Believe me when I say we are only just getting started. My vision for this podcast and for this community is enormous, and I want to take you all with me into that vision. Every single review that you leave me, every DM that you send me, every post in the Facebook group means so much to me. Don't think that I take it for granted. I really don't. I'm so grateful for all of them. I'm really proud of myself for many reasons, but particularly for having created such an incredible community of people who are all invested in the growth. You are my virtual best friends, and I am so, so glad that you are here with me. So yes, very exciting times. If you would like to come and work with me, I currently offer one-to-one sessions in a 4-week block, which is 444, or I do single sessions for 111. The details of the membership will be coming soon on my Instagram and in the Facebook group. But if you would like me to email you directly when the doors open, send me a message on the contact page of my website, which I've just recently changed. It's now www.sophiewaddington.com, and just send me a contact message with the subject membership and I'll add you onto the email list. I absolutely love working with you guys, and my clients have definitely become my friends. It is one of my favourite things to do, is to move you forward into your vision so that you can experience that in your 3D reality. So if you're being guided to take action towards your dreams, slide in the DMs and I'll give you some more information and answer any questions that you've got. So I'm going to leave you and love you, and I hope you have a fantastic week, and I will see you then for episode 101. I'll see you later.